There is in the scriptures, the Upanishads. Okay, in the ancient scriptures, there is a clear distinction in what is called intellectual knowledge and experiential knowledge. And while that may sound very obvious in in our lives, it happens that continuously, and it's not necessarily that obvious. So, for example, when you read these ancient or wisdom quotes, and you feel like, oh yeah, right. Of course, love is everywhere, for example, but you don't feel it. What happens is you don't have the experience, right? And in that case, maybe not even the intellectual knowledge, but in general, say you may have an understanding of how things are or how things should be, what works, what doesn't work, or what you need to change, or why you need to change, or what, from where are, let's say, your behaviors and your patterns coming from. Yet you can't change, or yet that understanding doesn't transition into something that is effectual. Effectual, yeah, like it doesn't becomes an execution in your life or integrated in your life. So what happens in that case is that, well, the experience is not just intellectual. It's like when you have a memory of something, it's not that it's just in your body, as some people say, but it's only not just in your mind. And this simplicity, but in simple terms, what it means is like, if you have an experience now, you are feeling something, you are smelling, there is all this information that is being gathered by your senses, and that is not only your five senses. It includes the energy you perceive, right? Your interpretation through your own filters of what's happening, which is also affected by all that you have experienced before. Yeah, so it's for each new experience, you're bringing previous experiences plus what you're experiencing now. And then that memory is a massive construct. So let's say it's a blueprint that is stored in your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is also the body. So it's how you felt, how you moved, how you reacted, what you looked, what you smelled, what you heard, right? So consciously, you remember just a tiny bit. If you could go back with certain techniques to be right back at certain moments, sometimes you remember things that you never thought you could have remembered, right? That's why sometimes that smell comes and you remember something and you just, wow, and you think for a moment, actually that smell was there, but maybe it wasn't, and you were not that conscious about the smell. Sometimes it's pretty obvious because it's a very strong smell or something that highlights in a particular way, but sometimes it isn't that obvious, and then the smell triggers a memory. Anyway, so all this experiential memory, let's say, is needs to be changed in order for a change to happen. So when we practice certain meditative practices, let's call that sadhana, which is a spiritual practice. Now, I know a lot of you, when you hear the term spiritual, are already put off. So let's say I'll ask you to put aside your preconceived notion, what you think you know spirituality is, and just put it aside for a moment, so that what you know doesn't interfere with what it actually is. Yeah, so you're open for a moment to think that maybe your concept of it is different to what it actually is, right? So what I'm trying to say is, when you do a spiritual practice, or what we call sadhana, a lot of these things, these memories that are stored in part in your body, in part in your mind, they begin to release because they're actually stored as memory. Thoughts are energy. So as you practice, they release, and then you need to deal with them. You need to know what they are. So some techniques are used in, let's say, Western psychology, and then they use the process of thinking. So you use the mind and you sort of understand, and yeah, you understand, but then that doesn't free you from holding on to that blueprint. So you really need to be able to resolve the emotion or the experiential blueprint of that moment, right? And sometimes that can be very strong, very hard. So if you're working with something extremely traumatic, then that can be shocking. So you need to be properly guided, feel very safe, have a very good connection with your guide or your therapist or your guru or your master, right? And even then, it can be really strong. So for those cases, usually it's safer to work in the body before, in a way that a lot of that is released already. Because if you could remember everything at once, it would be too much. Like, it would be crazy. You can have a shock just by remembering all your experiences at once. So the practices of sadhana soften those bits of you, allow you to release that in a safer way. Takes longer, but it's more comfortable, let's say, in the sense that the discomfort is not as strong, right? So yeah, when you practice and you begin to release all these things, yeah, your mind, your way of seeing things changes as well. It's as all those filters begin to disappear. And as they disappear, it's not like you're told how to see. It's not that you're told, hey, you need to change this. It's not that you tell yourself, I have to be like this or I have to be like that. It's that you naturally start to be like that. You start to change. You start to love. You start to be more kind. You start to look after yourself. You start to do all the many things. I'm just saying some general examples. But in many ways, you begin to naturally change. You stop being reactive in this way and reactive in that way. Yeah? It's not that you know how it happened. That's when it becomes an experiential understanding of everything. You may have the intellectual knowledge, you may have all the readings of all the books and that, but until that becomes something you integrate inside, then you won't get there, basically. There's a step that is missing. You can have just experiential knowledge and get to change without having the intellectual understanding, but if you have only the intellectual understanding, you will never get to that. Yeah, some things are maybe not as deep can sort of get changed, but generally they will continue to bother. It needs to be integrated. That's why in spiritual practices they will say practice, and it's also why usually enlightened beings they wouldn't talk much. Yeah, because they know that sometimes layers of the ego are just you can't break them with words. The only way is by doing certain sadhana practice, and they dissolve, and then the person is ready to hear, to listen in a different way. So an analogy is, for example, if you are driving and you can see a car coming, and intuitively you can tell, well, maybe not many people, also some people, if you're really good at driving, you can tell intuitively if the car has a certain speed that is either faster than your car or less fast than your car, right? And you can be intuitively very accurate and know, okay, I can go here, or not. Some people can't. They find that hard. But it's not like you're saying the car is exactly at 80 kilometers per hour or 80 miles, whatever. Yeah, you just know without the numbers and the calculations, yeah. Now you can have the intellectual knowledge and be able to say, 80 kilometers, blah, 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 but then you won't have the speed at the moment to make the calculations to take the action. You will depend on that to have the measurements and okay, but if you don't have those measurements at the moment, then you can't have the data to make the decision, right? Of course, you now can put that in a car and the car can make the decision for you, but in truth, what I'm trying to say is that you can have the physics understanding of the fact of the happening of the cars, and not enough intuition of understanding experiential practice to be able to make the calculation on the spot in your mind. Yeah, which is not the calculation, but the intuitive calculation of, I can go here. So experiential knowledge is vastly more important, way more important than any other knowledge. You can have certificates about yoga and meditation and all those things, but ultimately only your experience, only your practice is what is going to be it's going to take you somewhere that can actually help people. Generally, that somewhere is not far, it's just here. it just allows you to dissolve all the things in you, so then you can help others dissolve theirs. It's not that you become anything magnificent. which is what tends to happen. But I believe that we get better. There is no better. There is no fixing. Yeah, healing really means that you let go of shit, including your stories, what you believe of yourself, or yeah, what the trauma means, what the trauma made out of you. Yeah, holding on to that story, like, I had this happen to me and now that's why I am like this, that's why I'm suffering still, that's why I hold on, that's why I react like this. It's like, well, you can drop that, but obviously it's very difficult just to say to someone, drop it. That's why certain practices make that easy. Yeah, because through the mind. The mind is tricky. Okay. Bye bye.